白ひげ海賊団船長エドワード・ニューゲート。小屋にちょっと待ってな。ワンピースは実在する。
Zoro is in the observation room of the Thousand Sunny. Looking out of the window, he sees something floating on the ocean and alerts the crew. As the others look out, they see it's a barrel, and Usopp notes it has the character for treasure written on it. They pull it out of the water. Nami steps outside and says it probably just has alcohol and food in it. She notes the whole message on the barrel says gift to the god of the sea, and that this is a tradition for people to place those kinds of items in a barrel to pray for a safe journey. After some disappointment and discussion, they decide to open it anyway and drink up the booze. When they open the barrel, a large red light shoots up and explodes in the sky. The crew is a little shocked. They wonder what it means that there was a flare in the barrel, and Robin wonders if it is a mere prank or something more serious. Usopp worries that this was a trap, and Robin notes they could be targeted by someone. At that point, Nami notices changes in the atmosphere and senses a storm coming. She urges everyone to get in position to fight it as they only have 5 minutes. After some difficulties because of the strength of the storm, Frankie uses Channel 0 of the Soldier Dock system and gets them out of the storm. Zoro notes how dark it has gotten even though it is not nighttime, and Luffy mentions they are in the Ghost Sea, the Florian Triangle, that Kokoro told them about. At that moment, they start hearing a haunting song sung in the distance while a massive black ship with torn sails slowly approaches them. The crew is stunned and terrified to see the ghost ship once they notice it. As the ship passes by the Thousand Sunny, they see a skeleton wearing a suit and an afro and drinking a cup of tea, singing softly and watching them. Luffy is excited and wants to rush and see from up close the living skeleton of the legend. Sanji stops him and says he can't go alone or he will find a way to act rashly and get them in trouble. The crew draws straws and Nami and Sanji go with their captain. Once on the ship, Sanji and Luffy stare in amazement at the skeleton. The skeleton calmly apologizes for not greeting them properly but explains he was so surprised to see real people. All he has seen for years were terrifying ghost ships. He suggests they go inside and talk. He notices Nami and suavely notes how pretty she is. He tidies himself up and matter-of-factly asks if Nami can show him her panties, but the girl decks him. To Sanji's irritation, Luffy wants to know if the skeleton can poop, but Sanji insists there are more important questions: who is he and how come he is alive and can talk. Luffy interrupts because he has an even more important question. Luffy offers the skeleton to join his crew and he accepts. Brook is aboard the Thousand Sunny, greeting everyone, refers to himself as just Dead Bones Brook. Chopper is seen with a cross. Brook approaches Robin, commending her beauty, asks if he could see her panties. Nami comically hits him, calling him a perverted skeleton. Usopp gathers exorcism materials and began an attempt to exorcise an evil spirit Brook. Brook inquired where the evil spirit was and Usopp and Chopper comically answered, saying it was Brook. While in the ship, Brook mentioned he has not had food to eat in so long and requested milk to drink. Luffy called him Korobokal and Brook corrected him. Brook inquired what Luffy's name was, and he was told. Then Luffy asked Brook what he was, and Zoro comically asked why they did not ask those questions when they first met. Sanji prepared dinner, which they all heartily enjoyed. After dinner, Brook told the crew he was a devil fruit user of Yomi Yomi no Mai. Brook told them he had died once, years passed, and the Yomi 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 no Mai grants its user the ability to be resurrected. He told them he was once a pirate like them, which excited Luffy, and he was aboard the ship they found him on. He went on telling them his crew came to the Sea of Devils but were defeated by a stronger pirate crew, killing his crewmates and himself. While he was alive, Brook explained to them that he just simply could not swim. However, after death, his soul returned from the underworld. His soul was unable to find his body on time due to the fog that makes that part of the sea difficult to navigate. It took 1 year for his soul to find his body, and by then he had decomposed to bones. Zoro asked how Brook still has his hair, and Brook responded saying he has tough roots. Usopp asked if Brook was a human or ghost, and Brook responded that he was scared of ghosts. On hearing that, Nami brought out a mirror so as to show Brook how he looked. Brook was very scared at seeing the mirror. That was when Usopp and Chopper realized that Brook had no reflection and shadow. They referred to him as a vampire, and the crew was ready to attack except Luffy, who thought Brook was awesome. Brook told them, him being a skeleton and having no shadow are unrelated. He told them he cannot live or see the sunlight because his shadow is stolen. Robin asks what would happen if Brook saw the sunlight, and he answered that he would disintegrate. He then told them of an incident he witnessed when a person who had no shadow comes in contact with sunlight. Brook, yet after telling his story, was still delighted. He told the crew of how he had aimlessly traveled that sea lonely and scared and waiting to die. However, he lived on. He told them they were his joy. Brook, at that point, refused Luffy's offer to join his crew, saying if he left the covers of the fog, it would be a matter of time before he disintegrates. He told them he would wait until he gets his shadow back. Luffy was upset at Brook's statement and told Brook if Brook needed his shadow, he would get it back for him. Luffy demanded who the person was, but Brook refused to tell him. Then, Brook decided to play music for them, stating he was the past crew's musician. Luffy, excited that Brook is a musician, said Brook must join his crew. Just as Brook was about to play a song, he noticed a hollow and yelled ghost, and a rocking feeling was felt on the ship. Upon coming out to see what had happened, the crew noticed a huge object on their course. Brook told them it was the back of the gate, and told the Straw Hat crew to come look at the back of the ship. Reaching there, they were surprised by what they saw. Brook then asked if they picked up a floating barrel. Luffy had a flashback of picking up a floating barrel, and told Brook they did. Brook told them it was a trap and their ship has been targeted after that incident. Luffy asked why an island was there, and Brook responded telling them it is the wandering ghost island Thriller Bark. Nami notices that her log pose has not reacted to the presence of the island. Brook explains that is because Thriller Bark is an island that drifted from West Blue. As he walks inside and picks up his cane, Brook tells the Straw Hat crew that this is a lucky day, because he both met them, and now sees one of his dearest wishes finally realized. He opens the door on the other side of the kitchen and jumps in the air on the prow. Sanji remarks on how light he is. Brook then bids farewell to the crew. He urges them to quickly make their way out of the gate away from this island, and thanks them for the meal. He suggests fate may make them cross paths again someday. He then jumps off the boat altogether, and to the crew's amazement, he runs on the water away from them. Nami then suggests they follow his advice and sail away as fast as they can, but from Luffy's facial expression the others realize he wants to go on the island. Chopper worries about the ghost they saw earlier, but Zoro saw it fly towards the island. Robin then points out to the rest of the crew what probably happened earlier when the boat shook. The mouth-like gate probably enclosed them in a fence wall that runs all around the island. They are trapped. Frankie also points out that they are in the middle of the sea, which means they can't drop anchor. Nami and Chopper sob they have the can't get on this island disease, but Luffy is ready and raring to go. He has a net and a box to catch a ghost and keep it as a pet. Usopp is appalled and try to dissuade him. Robin also suggests she wants to go, and it is decided Luffy, Robin and Frankie will go explore the island. Frankie suggests they need to use Soldier Dock System Channel 2 to get on the island. He explains the Soldier Dock System and unveils his present. To the crew, Channel 2 is a steam-powered mini-Mary that can seat 4 people. As they will be staying on the Thousand Sunny, Nami, Chopper, and Usopp are invited to test run the mini-Mary first while the others watch from the boat. Everybody is thrilled and excited, and Luffy is dying to try it too. As the people still on the boat are talking, Nami is heard screaming in the distance. Sanji runs to the side of the boat, but nobody can see anything in the fog. Suddenly, the anchor is dropped without anyone visibly dropping it. Frankie notes the gears sound much more worn out than they should be on a brand new boat. A trapdoor on the lawn deck abruptly opens and everybody is puzzled. There shouldn't be anyone else on the boat. Luffy's face starts stretching, and as Sanji yells at him to stop goofing around, Luffy protests he isn't doing anything. One of Zoro's katanas is taken out of its scabbard and thrown in the air at Luffy, who is on the floor after his face was stretched back. Frankie jumps in and kicks Luffy out of the way before he gets injured. Frankie yells at Zoro, who protests it wasn't him. Everybody realizes that there must be someone else on the boat with them. Frankie speculates the culprit is a ghost or a devil's fruit user. Luffy confirms he did feel someone grabbing him, and Robin says she heard the growl of a wild beast. Sanji is worried about Nami and decides to jump off the ship to go after the missing members of the crew. However, as he jumps, something grabs his leg and starts throwing him around and back on the ship. Frankie is shocked the ghost won't let them leave the ship. Robin starts screaming and is seen pushing back against something that is pushing onto her, and we see the signs she is being licked by something. Sanji is furious and runs to protect her, but he is tripped by an unseen obstacle. A beast is indeed heard growling. The sea starts becoming tormented with big waves that Frankie speculates must be artificial since they are inside the fence. Everybody is confused what to do, and Sanji is worried they are going to be separated from Nami and the others. Frankie suggests they use his flying surprise pool to overcome the waves. Back on the island, Nami, Chopper, and Usopp have fallen down a very deep ditch that is located between the actual island and the sea. She explains they were having too much fun with the Mini Mary and probably bumped into the embankment that she did not see because of the fog and got thrown into the ditch. Chopper and Usopp are upset and scared that they are on the ghost island. The bottom of the ditch is full of skulls and bones, which does not help calm their nerves. Nami hopes her cuteness will help them forgive her for putting them in this predicament. Usopp hopes Luffy will find them there, but they debate whether it would be wiser to wait on the bank above instead. Suddenly, a 3-headed dog appears in the dark. As the three stranded straw hat pirates are shocked, Chopper realizes this must be Cerberus, the guard dog of hell. Nami, Usopp, and Chopper start running away, with Cerberus and Toad chasing them. Chopper notices that one of the three heads is the head of a fox, not of a dog, which seems to anger Cerberus even more. Everybody is confused where they are and what is going on. As they run, they find a large staircase that seems to lead to the island proper. Upstairs, they find themselves in a forest. Usopp uses a Kimura Boshi to create smoke, and once it clears, the Cerberus cannot find them anywhere. The beast starts moving further into the forest while Nami, Usopp, and Chopper are actually hiding up in a tree. Usopp remarks that the beast does not seem to have the developed sense of smell of a normal dog. The three straw hat pirates wonder what to do now. With Cerberus running around, they can't be walking around in the open. A voice behind them confirms they are in danger. It is a vampire-looking man who is hanging upside down on a tree branch. He introduces himself as Hilden. He says he saw them being chased by Cerberus and followed them secretly to protect them in case of trouble. He says that as nighttime is falling, the forest is indeed going to become dangerous for them, and maybe they should ride his carriage with him back to Dr. Hogback's mansion. Chopper reacts with shock to hearing Dr. Hogback's name. Usopp, Nami, and Chopper take up Hilden's offer in accompanying them to the mansion while they traverse through the forest via carriage. Inside the carriage, they discuss about the strange creatures in the forest, with Hilden telling the three that it is dangerous at night and that the mansion is the best place to wait for the rest of the crew. Chopper excitedly asks if they can really meet Dr. Hogback, a doctor whom he idolizes, and explains to Usopp and Nami who he is, telling them that he is a renowned surgical genius who suddenly disappeared without a trace. While Hilden is telling Chopper that Dr. Hogback is in the mansion, Nami is shocked when she looks through the window and saw a lion with a man's face and started screaming, scaring Usopp and Chopper as well. Usopp asks what she was screaming about. When she told about the lion, he didn't believe her, so they looked out the window again, only to find many strange creatures, but after blinking the creatures were gone, prompting them to become more scared. Nami and Usopp wants the carriage to stop and go back, but Hilden explains that what they saw were possibly just illusions made by the fog. Chopper is saddened by their decision to go back, but Usopp managed to convince him. When the three made up their mind to go back, Hilden told them to stay put inside while he talks to the carriage driver. However, after a few minutes of waiting, Usopp decides to check on Hilden and ask what's taking so long, only to see that there was no one there and that they are in the middle of a graveyard. The three freaks out and tried to calm themselves, but then zombies started to rise from the earth. The three tried to hide in the carriage, but a zombie grabbed Usopp and dragged him out, while other zombies turn over the carriage, forcing Nami and Chopper out. Nami heard Usopp scream and saw him getting bitten by zombies. As Nami tried to get to Usopp, grabbed by a zombie that suddenly popped up from underneath her, causing her to fall on her knees as the zombie tried to bite her while a platoon of zombies surrounds her. Chopper runs towards Usopp in his heavy point, helps Usopp and knocks the head of a zombie, but is shocked when the zombie put his head back. Nami screams for help, and Usopp used Hisatsu Kaienboshi to start a fire, startling the zombies, making them let go of Nami. They used this to run away from the zombies, with Usopp telling the two that zombies move slow, making running impossible, which got the zombies mad and run after them at a fast pace, shocking the three. However, the zombies soon run out of stamina, giving the three pirates a chance to escape. Meanwhile, on the Thousand Sunny, the rest of the crew tries to steer the ship, but the helm is stuck because of the current, causing it to run into a gigantic spiderweb, entangling it and making it hard to get out. Nami, Chopper, and Usopp continue into the forest, eventually arriving at the gate of the mansion. Having no other choice, they decide to go in, where they are welcomed by Sindri. She then starts throwing plates at Usopp, stating that he cannot enter the mansion while the other two can. Eventually, a man came out and greeted them, saying that they are welcome inside, and explains that Sindri was once engaged to a man whom she tested his love for her by breaking his most valuable plates, causing him to abandon her, thus making her negative. He introduces himself as Dr. Hogback. Sindri invited the three inside and locks the door, leaving Hogback outside. In the dining room, Hogback asks why they came in his mansion. Chopper says he wants to talk to Hogback, while Nami and Usopp tells him that they were chased by zombies. Hogback is surprised to see them escape the zombies and tells them that he had no idea what they are, and says that they are the reason why he is living here to study them. Chopper, amazed by Hogback, roots for him and asks for his autograph, which Hogback willingly give. However, when Chopper asked if he can see Hogback's lab, to which he angrily stated that he, Chopper, will never see his lab. Afterwards, Sindri came back, serving them flans without plates, and telling the three that the bath is ready for them to get clean. Usopp then asked Hogback if he saw a skeleton man pass by the mansion, to which he answered nervously with a no. After the dinner with Dr. Hogback, Nami decides to take a bath, with Usopp and Chopper guarding the bathroom door. Chopper states that he wants to take a peek in Hogback's lab, while Usopp complains to Nami that if she is scared, She should not take a bath, which she replies that when night falls, they will leave the mansion. The two boys complain, saying that they won't make a move for now and that they will wait for Luffy and the others. Nami then says that there are abnormal presences in the mansion as well, scaring the two. She states that she also suspects that Dr. Hogback was lying when he said that he does not have a relationship with the zombies. She heard a growl and voice, thinking it was Usopp or Chopper. Suddenly, invisible hands grab her arms and pins her on the wall. The invisible man continues to growl at Nami, stating that she will be his bride. Usopp and Chopper burst through the door, panicked, when Nami tells them that someone else is in the bathroom with them. Usopp, however, only ends up seeing Nami completely naked and pervertedly thanks her for letting him see her naked, confusing Chopper. With quick thinking, she kicks her unknown assaulter in the groin, freeing from restraint. Chopper uses his sense of smell to check if he is still there, while Usopp attacks the invisible man, though he escapes. Nami, startled and briefly traumatized from the attack, wraps a towel around her naked body to cover herself. Usopp asks Nami if she is okay, to which she replies that the invisible man knows their plan. Meanwhile, the Thousand Sunny is immobilized after getting stuck in the spiderweb. Zoro suspects that everything that happened after Nami, Usopp, and Chopper disappeared is a trap, but Luffy insists in exploring the island while searching for Nami, Usopp, and Chopper, prompting Zoro to join them. On their way to the forest, they came across Cerberus, which they scared when they reacted differently than others would have. Luffy tries to tame it, but all three heads bites him, making him punch them, thus taming it. The crew continue their search for the three. In the forest, they encounter two strange creatures, a talking tree and a unicorn. Frankie and Luffy run after them, and eventually catches, making Luffy ask the two to join their crew, which Zoro and Sanji objects. Outside the mansion, Hogback and the Invisible Man, Absalom, talk with Absalom saying that he will make Nami his bride, but Hogback refuses to hand her because of her bounty. Then a ghost came saying that all the crew members have bounties on their head. Hogback says to Absalom that he needs to go all out in order to capture Luffy because of his belly 300 million bounty. Inside, Usopp argues with Nami in the hallway about the invisible man in the bathroom. Usopp continues to state that zombies and other abnormal phenomenons that occurred were not real, with the exception of Brook because of his devil fruit. He asks Chopper for support by saying that aside from Brook's power, there is no other way to resurrect the dead. Chopper says that in a medical point of view there may be a natural explanation on this, but since Hogback threw his glory for his research, Chopper believes that there may be miracles on the island. Nami tries to tell Chopper that he trusts Hogback too much, but Chopper defends him and asks the two proof that Hogback has a connection to those zombies. Nami argues that it is obvious, even calling Hogback the king of zombies. Usopp stopped the two from arguing further, and Chopper went ahead to talk to Hogback to clear things out, with Usopp and Nami following. They arrive in the dining room, but it is pitch black, and that no one was there. Suddenly, the light went on, and they saw Hilden hanging upside down. He says that Dr. and Sindri have already gone to bed, however, upon seeing him, Usopp got mad for leaving them in the middle of the graveyard. Hilden apologized and tried to guide them back to their rooms, but the Nami and Usopp refused to believe his excuses, saying that they plan to leave. Chopper is reluctant, saying that he wants to talk to Hogback one more time. Then they heard a voice belonging to a woman inside a portrait, shocking the three pirates. The woman came out of the portrait, shocking them further, and grabs Chopper. The other zombies attack them, with one taxidermy zombie stating that he is the captain of the zombies there. A bearskin rug zombie attacks Usopp, thinking that Usopp was the one who stabbed him, and throws him, making him hang on the chandelier. Overwhelmed, Usopp threw a candle at the zombie, setting it on fire. The other zombies try to attack him, but Usopp retaliates by throwing all the candles at them, giving the three a chance to escape. However, the door is locked, trapping them inside the mansion while the zombies start to recover, wanting to get revenge on them, and the three attempt to block the passage, preventing them to enter. The three enter in Sindri's room, and Nami reads the book about her past of being an actress of how she died on the stage. Nami sees a treasure chest and asks Usopp to open it, but when he does, it turns out to be a Jack-in-the-Box zombie. Usopp, me, and Chopper then escape. Ryuma comes up and talks to the zombies never to fear, and that he shall herd them up, and laughs maniacally like Brook did. While Luffy and the crew are riding with Cerberus on the forest, Sanji tells Luffy that the skeleton was bad enough and that they do not need trees and unicorns on the crew, and that they already got Chopper by referring to him as Raccoon Dog and Frankie by referring to him as a robot, and that this is messed up enough. Frankie starts telling Sanji that he is not a robot, he is a cyborg, and the two argue. Robin then takes notice of how everything they have encountered since they came on the island has had bandages, stitches, and numbers tattooed on their bodies. Luffy questions the zombie group's intentions. They inform him they are hanging out in the graveyard. He then interrogates on where Nami, Chopper, and Usopp might be, but they refuse to talk. As the Straw Hat Captain is about to hit them, the zombie admit they didn't harm them. The Straw Hat group begins to beat them up and begin to check Dr. Hogback's home. A person carrying a torch approaches the beaten zombies. While walking through the forest, Zoro and Sanji get into another argument when another zombie comes in awe of their power. This zombie informs the group of a major threat who stole the zombie shadows, Gecko Moria, the most terrifying on the island. This catches Robin's ears as his bounty's much higher than Luffy's and one of the 7 warlords of the sea. The old zombie also warns that Gecko Moria will also be after the Straw Hat Pirates' shadows, and when the sunlight hits them, they will be vaporized. Luffy picks up his lantern and accepts the challenge. Just then, more zombies without shadows appear to encourage the group. Meanwhile, Rima knocks Nami, Usopp, and Chopper into Hogback's lab, surprising and angering the scientist. The 3 pirates try to apologize, and Hogback warns that the night raid will commence and anyone walking after midnight will be killed. The Invisible Man spots the buried zombies and plucks them out of the ground. He then begins the awakening of the zombie soldiers and they rise again. Absalom reveals himself and the soldiers chant his name. They then call him a pervert and Absalom calls for silence. The ghosts creeping through the forest gather to Kumasi and a girl's chambers, forming Perona up. As more zombies race to inform Moria, one of the short zombies, Neen, wakes their boss up. The 3 little zombies tell of the Straw Hat's progress thus far. Luffy and his party spot rain pouring down and they spot a pirate sail. The old zombie then warns that Thriller Bark has a sail and is actually a very large pirate ship. The back of the mast is also the home of Gecko Moria. Absalom then begins the order to hunt down the pirates at the stroke of midnight. Perona prepares for battle and Moria announces that Thriller Bark will give nightmares. Meanwhile, Luffy begins to head inside. The zombie soldiers march through the forest carrying a large orb. Meanwhile, in Hogback's lab, Nami learns the truth about how Hogback was making the zombies. She also tells of how Sindri died 10 years prior. Having been found out, Hogback orders Sindri and Ryuma to kill the group. Ryuma then walks into the lab laughing like Brook and admiring Nami even without his eyes. He almost gets to glare at Nami's panties but is denied. The navigator begins to wonder about Brook's personality being replicated by the samurai. Ryuma was once from the kingdom of Wano. The skeletal samurai dashes through with nothing happening at first and asks for a sandwich from Sindri. The group almost makes it out, but Ryuma's power knocks the 3 down. Ryuma then says he used the 3-verse humming arrow notch slash. The zombie soldiers continue their march while Luffy's inspecting the mansion grounds while searching for Moria. He and his party find an empty room full of seemingly harmless portraits. Just then, Bihaichuk, the living bear rug, and the portrait zombies begin their surprise attack. Luffy begins to smile while Sanji interrogates the portrait monsters. Robin also uses the twist on some of the portrait zombies and Frankie breaks another's spear, using his brute strength. Zoro also uses Nagiri to cut through some portrait zombies too, and Luffy leads the bear rug zombie on a wild goose chase ending with the Straw Hat, using the Gum Gum Bazooka to knock the bear down. Bichuk is in shock seeing his allies beaten. Meanwhile, in Hogback's lab, Nami, Usopp, and Chopper are trapped in a coffin to be disposed of. The soldiers trek through and eventually reach Moria's mansion. Bichuk then tries to make an excuse that 3 of Luffy's crew are sleeping upstairs, but Frankie notices Sanji had disappeared. Zoro begins to fear for the worst, and Luffy is confident that their cook can survive. Robin insists on taking the mounted pig as a guide while the portrait zombies are laughing and insist they go with them. The zombies warn that when they fight Moria, they will be wiped out one by one. Luffy then warns if any harm comes to his crew, he'll beat Moria so hard it would take Thriller Bark apart. As they take Bichuk as a guide and the pig warns the surprised zombies are downed. The orb the zombie soldiers brought in was a disco ball and they sing a massive song to begin their night raid. Absalom heads into a casket room and awakes the general zombies out of their coffins and out of the ground. Nami, Usopp, and Chopper's coffin is then ferried out of the mansion. Absalom concludes his speech to teach the Straw Hat pirates the meaning of fear. After awakening the general zombies, Absalom is accosted by Lola, a zombie warthog obsessed with making him her husband. After learning that he has chosen Nami to be his bride, Lola sets her sights on the navigator. Nami, Usopp, and Chopper manage to escape their coffin and find themselves in a garden, surrounded by animal zombies, including a bizarre penguin bulldog zombie named Inupi, who talks and acts a lot like Sanji. The other Straw Hats, meanwhile, discover a hallway lined with suits of armor, and realize that Zoro is now missing as well. The Straw Hats are beginning to wonder where Sanji and Zoro are. A golden knight begins walking towards Luffy's party with a straw hat and falls over. It is Luffy in disguise. Frankie then tells of how his heart became black. Bichuk then brings Luffy's party to a room full of tents. Then a knight dives down to hit Frankie, who dodges. It is a general zombie. This knighted zombie fights with Frankie and is unable to pierce him. The knight launches a cross-shaped projectile that can cut steel. The cyborg then shoots a weapons left at the knight. The knight gets back up and cuts through Frankie, then goes for Luffy and Robin when the cyborg throws it back. Buhaichuk then points out how the general zombies can take more hits. Among them are a knight, a criminal, a samurai, and also a gunslinger. The wall then closes behind Buhaichuk. Then, more zombie generals with armor appear and give Luffy's party trouble. Robin knows that on escaping, they could be in the courtyard. The Straw Hats then begin the offensive. Meanwhile, Absalom is trying to outrun Lola, who is determined to marry the zombie. Absalom shows his desire to marry Nami while the Warthog zombie seeks to kill Nami. Inupi, using Sanji's personality, protects Nami, Chopper, and Usopp from the animal zombies. This leaves the navigator wondering about the penguin dog's personality. Elsewhere, Perona begins to steal the goods from the Thousand Sunny. Zoro is imprisoned in Gecko Moria's chambers and is knocked out by another slash. He lays beside an also captive Sanji. Frankie uses his strong right on a large zombie. Robin ties up a few with the Trienta Fleurs, while Luffy bashes some. However, the zombies get back up and it would seem Luffy's party is in trouble. As the group of zombie generals get up, a warrior uses the 36 caliber Phoenix to cut through several zombies. First, Luffy thinks it is Zoro, but it is actually a warrior using sabers with scars all over his body, Jigoro. This warrior declares Luffy his enemy and desires to kill the captain. Frankie begins to have trouble when Robin swings to rescue her friend and they run along a catwalk. The cyborg then blows a fresh fire, and the zombies drench themselves with water. The archaeologist uses and wants Fleurs and Slam to try and stall the zombies. As they race to the outside, they begin to learn that Luffy had gone missing. Luffy is also trapped in a casket and ferried to another part of the castle. A spider monkey-like zombie then appears blocking the way. The two begin to feel outnumbered. Inupi continues to pummel more animal zombies with his kicks. The dog penguin zombie gives a speech about how love is a hurricane. He then goes hostile towards Usopp and Chopper. Just then, Lola arrives targeting Nami while Absalom is trying to stop her rampage. The Warthog then begins to flirt with the zombie and demands his love, trying to kiss Absalom. After a number of missed kisses, Absalom knocks Lola off. The Warthog then accuses Nami for stealing her love, but Inupi breaks Lola's axe. The angry love-crazed zombie then punches the penguin dog zombie away. Absalom then kidnaps Nami whilst invisible and begins to prepare his wedding ceremony. That is when Usopp and Chopper recognize Absalom as the man who snuck in on Nami's bath. The navigator then blasts Absalom with a thunder charge, releasing his grip, allowing the three Straw Hats to flee. Just then, Absalom begins to feel love for Nami while Lola gives chase. The animal zombies worry about the punishment Perona will lay on them, while Inupi begins to feel weak. The wild zombies then disobey Absalom's word, but are stopped by a loud command from the lion-faced zombie tells them he will not tolerate misconduct. Inupi then warns no one will hurt Nami, but Absalom launches his right hand at the dog penguin zombie. The lion-faced zombie then warns the dog penguin to watch his mouth. As Nami's party continues to run away from Lola, Nami plans to use Usopp and Chopper as shields against the Warthog zombie. However, the two get up unscathed. Lola readies her swords to strike Nami, who defends herself with her climb attack. Usopp and Chopper dive onto the Warthog, but she still won't give up. Meanwhile, Taran and the zombie generals corner Frankie and Robin, who learn they were taken via caskets to Moria's chambers. Taran reveals he used a web to restrain the Thousand Sunny, and hiding is useless. As Frankie prepares to make a last stand with his cubed event, the bridge is crippled, sending the zombies falling down. Robin uses her Cyan Fleur's wings to fly and catch her friend. Frankie latches to the building where Luffy was taken and Robin arrives safely, while the cyborg crashes into a wall. Tararan gets up and just then, Brook falls down from the sky and makes a hard landing. Lola continues her relentless pursuit of Nami, showing she would marry Absalom no matter. She knocks Usopp and Chopper away and almost kills her when Nami claims she's a man posing as a woman. Nami then points out the Warthog zombie should chase after Absalom instead, and Lola begins to feel hope in her heart. Nami tells her it was friendship and the zombie calls her a friend. The zombie tells of how Absalom has been ignoring her, and the navigator advises she needs to knock out the lion-faced zombie and make him sign the wedding papers. Nami then learns of some valuable treasure which is near Perona's room. Usopp steps on a stick and learns of Absalom walking by. Lola then charges at the zombie, still desiring to marry him. With her ploy working, Nami then begins to trek for the mansion's treasure room. Midget zombies then carry the captured Luffy to Moria's chambers. Perona is angry that the Thousand Sunny doesn't have much treasure on board but steals some food and money. Hilden then calls for a meeting with the mysterious three and calls for the birth of Zombie 900. Moria learns of Luffy's skill and announces his intentions to make the Straw Hat Pirate his pawn in becoming Pirate King. Lola becomes angry that Absalom hasn't come out of hiding. Absalom is coming for the three and they find a hiding spot with a zipper. They don't see they are hiding in Kumasi. The lion-faced zombie is scolded by Perona for coming into her chambers but is then called in for a meeting. Hilden also reports that Brook is on the loose. Meanwhile, Terran uses webbing to get to where Frankie and Robin are, and the cyborg plans to make a spider smasher to buy time. The spider monkey uses a sticky spider net to launch a web projectile, but then Robin uses a size fleur to slap his eyes and make his eyesight messed up. Frankie then shows some columns chained together and smashes Terran hard. Eventually, the spider monkey entraps the columns, but is then shot by a weapon's left. Just then, Robin is entrapped by the spider mice and Terran entraps Frankie too. The mice then admit they kidnapped the other Straw Hats to be transported to Moria. Then Brook's singing is heard. Terran is annoyed by this, and Brook sees how the Straw Hats came to Thriller bark all along. The skeleton then says he would quicken the fight. He then uses the 3-verse humming arrow notch slash to cut through Terran. Terran is in genuine pain, much to the shock of Robin and the spider mice. Frankie warns Brook that Terran is a zombie, and therefore won't be defeated by a simple cutting move. Brook confidently tells him that the spider monkey is indeed finished, since zombies actually have a weakness that Brook has identified. Terran's agony becomes more violent and a black substance flies out of his mouth towards the sky. Brook explains that it is his soul returning to its master. Terran collapses and loses consciousness. The spider mice are shocked and upset. Frankie wants to know what happened and Brook states this was purification. The spider mice suddenly recognize Brook as the humming Brook who caused a ruckus on the island 5 years ago. They rush inside to inform Moria about it. Brook tells Frankie that while the spiderweb is immune to brute force, it can be destroyed by fire, which, sure enough, Frankie illustrates with his fire breath. Once free, Frankie and Robin confronts Brook about his knowledge of the island. Brook is concerned about the members of the Straw Hat crew that have already been captured and whether it is too late for them. After a bit of goofing around, Frankie finally gets Brook to tell them what he knows. Brook tells them of spending the years after his death drifting on the sea on a ship with a broken rudder. 5 years ago, though, he was led to Thriller Bark. Hoping to find a way to repair his ship and finally escape the Florian Triangle, he went in to investigate. He found the zombies and ended up being captured. He was brought to the building they currently stand in front of. There he saw a combat dancer and a patched corpse called a marionette. Then a huge man, Moria, tore the dancer's shadow from the floor and inserted it into the corpse, who then suddenly came to life, replicating the moves of the dancer, while the dancer himself lost consciousness. Soon thereafter, the same thing happened to Brook himself. Brook explains that a shadow is a replicate soul that follows you everywhere. Gecko Moria, thanks to his cage no mai, seizes them and makes them obey his will. He uses a corpse, usually the corpse of legendary warriors, sometimes sewn together from different pieces by Dr. Hogback, to transfer the shadow soul into and revive them. It combines the physical strength of the body of the marionette and the personality and fighting skills of the shadowed soul. This is why Moria is particularly eager to find bounty heads to capture. Because of that strength, though, the original owners of the shadow are generally sent away and left drifting at sea after they lose consciousness, which worries Frankie and Robin. But Brook figures they still have some time before that happens to the captured Straw Hats. Brook has a plan and orders the other two to follow it. Frankie is reluctant, but Robin asks Brook to tell them what it is. Inside, Jaro, Neen, and Bao announce the arrival of the 3 mysterious persons. Dr. Hogback, Perona, and Absalom enter the room and stand in front of Moria, whose face and gigantic body are finally revealed. He tells them how eager he is to become Pirate King, but Luffy, who is tied up with spiderweb string in a cage in the same room, yells that he will be the one who becomes Pirate King, not Moria. Luffy yells at Moria to give Zoro, Sanji, Nami, and the others back. Dr. Hogback admires Luffy's strength, but Perona is skeptical whether Luffy is the type of man who would actually be a threat to the world government. Luffy and Absalom bicker about the armor Luffy is wearing and romance. Moria tells Luffy he only captured 3 members of his crew so far: Luffy himself, Zoro, and a blonde guy with no wanted poster. Luffy surmises it must be Sanji. Inside Kumashi, Nami and Chopper are eavesdropping, and the 3 of them are shocked that the 3 strongest members of the crew got captured. Moria asks Perona about the missing 3 members, and Perona says the Risky brothers never showed up with them. She assumes they must have escaped. Kumashi approaches to try and tell them about them being hidden inside his body, but Perona shushes him again. Absalom tells the others of the fight those 3 Straw Hats had in Perona's garden, then suddenly worries Hogback did something to his bride Nami. As they bicker, Sindri interrupts with some put-downs. Moria interrupts, pointing out they can capture the missing pirates later. He wanted them here to show them the creation of Moria's new great fighting asset. Suddenly a scream is heard, and Luffy, still tied up with spider web string and in the armor, is crawling around the room. Bao tells Moria that Luffy bit through his cage to escape. Hogback is excited by Luffy's fighting spirit, but as Absalom raises his hand to attack, Perona points out that because they are inside, it is better if she takes care of it. Perona starts running after Luffy, and Luffy, still crawling, taunts her. But 3 of the negative ghosts come out of Perona's body and aim straight for Luffy, who can't crawl fast enough away from them. As they pass through his body, Luffy stops crawling, goes into the fetal position, and wishes sadly he was reborn as a sea slug. Absalom notes with a mix of admiration and dread how the negative ghosts were able to destroy the spirit of the man who wants to be Pirate King. A while later, Luffy is seen without the armor but still tied up in the spider string. This time, he is also hanging to the ceiling with some more string while standing in front of Moria. His spirit is back and he is still grunting and cursing Moria. A large light source is turned on behind Luffy and Moria leans over to grab the shadow Luffy's body is creating on the floor. He picks it up from the floor, dragging Luffy along with it. Nami, Usopp, and Chopper, still hidden inside Kamashi, watch in horror. Luffy is shocked and yells at him to stop. Moria pulls out a gigantic pair of scissors and cuts the shadow from Luffy's body. Luffy falls on the floor and loses consciousness. Moria laughs and celebrates that he now has Luffy's shadow with the Bailey 300 million fighting power. He proclaims his intention to use it to create the ultimate special zombie. Having stolen Luffy's shadow, Moria now has the means to give a new life to Oars to the horrors of Nami, Usopp, and Chopper. Perona begins to be suspicious of Kumasi, thinking he's talking. The 3 straw hats begin to make funny noises in the bear zombie. Hogback tells of how he has preserved 900 zombie, and the 3 hench people of Moria begin to think of their dreams. It wouldn't be very long for Moria to build an empire of zombies. Absalom orders Luffy's body be placed on his ship when he hears reports of Tararan's defeat at Brook's hands. Brook tells Frankie and Robin to get back to the Thousand Sunny and warns with even without the shadow, the body still lives. They learn that Moria intends to leave the Thousand Sunny adrift with the bodies of the victims. Brook then warns the 2 must not lose their shadows and must try to wake up their bodies. He then gives out some salt to purify the zombies. Brook then informs of how he has a desire to fight the zombie who holds possession of his shadow, Raima. The skeleton then declares he won't run any longer and leaves the group. Frankie then asks a question. Hogback is infuriated on how Brook's weapon against the zombies. Perona is intrigued of the humming swordsman. Moria then sees 900 zombie in the freezer, while the spider mice move to place Luffy on the ship. Usopp realizes the captain is still alive. Captain John and the zombie generals are in shock over Tararan's defeat. Jigoro then plans to kill the remaining straw hats. Frankie is crying profusely about while running up some stairs with Robin. Meanwhile, the surprise zombies are cut through by Brook and purified. The humming swordsman then thinks of his last battle with Raima and how he lost. This makes the skeleton determined to win and get back his shadow. In the freezer, Moria and his entourage learn of how Oars was the continent puller and made a country of criminals. Moria then sees the lifeless Oars and the group are in shock and awe. Moria then prepares for the process to revive Oars. Moria walks along the chains to the lifeless Oars being watched by his minions as well as the horrified straw hats. No matter how the shadow of Luffy struggles, Moria holds the shadow and makes it swear loyalty. The zombie then places Luffy's shadow into Oars, making the giant monster begin to feel new life and break the chains binding it. Nami's party is horrified as the monster opens his eyes. The straw hats make loud noises and are noticed by Absalom and Perona. Jaro, Nin, and Bao block the exit. Oars drops an ice block, hitting Dr. Hogback, who admires his masterpiece. Oars then yells for meat in a distorted version of Luffy's voice and calls for Sanji. The yell blows Nami's party out of the room and they try to escape. Chopper realizes that Dr. Hogback is the one making the zombies and they steal personalities with the shadows inside them. The reindeer knows that Hogback is using people like pawns. Usopp knows they must save the bodies of the other pirates and their crew. Just then, Absalom lights Usopp and Chopper on fire and abducts Nami so he can marry her. Usopp tries to save his friend with the Viper Star 6, but the lion-faced zombie and Nami disappear. Absalom then orders some zombie knights to capture Usopp and Chopper. The zombie soldiers then demand for their shadows and overpower them, but the 2 pirates break free and race back up the stairs. They are completely surrounded until Frankie and Robin purify the zombies. The zombies are horrified about how their secret was ratted out, but Frankie has failed to save Nami while Usopp and Chopper cry in joy. Brook runs up a flight of stairs and confronts Ryuma in a room, calmly waiting for him there. Ryuma asks if he knows what giving up means, to which Brook replies he will never give up until he reclaims what he has lost. Ryuma states that he is a legendary dragon-slaying swordsman and that the level of their bodies are different, but Brook disagrees, saying that he is his shadow and will fight to return him to his rightful position under Brook's feet. Elsewhere, a group of zombies express their shock at people other than that humming guy knowing about their weakness, stating that despite not being able to die as their catchphrase, it is useless if they are terrified of being destroyed. Robin, Frankie, Usopp, and Chopper are running down a flight of stairs, to which the former claims is used to transport stolen shadows. Usopp realizes that the zombies from before were transporting Luffy. He and Chopper worry about Nami, but Usopp says that since her life isn't in danger, they'll definitely go back to save her. Frankie replies that that is the exact reason they need to return to the Sunny, wake up the monster trio, and take back their shadows. Chopper states that it won't be easy due to the amount of zombies, while Usopp asks just how they were able to defeat the group from before. Frankie responded, saying that Brook had been the one to tell them of the zombies' weakness, recalling how both he and Robin were given small pouches while Brook explained the vulnerability of zombies to salt. Chopper expresses surprise at the zombies having a weakness, while Usopp realizes that by throwing salt into their mouths, the purification is complete and the shadows are released. Robin asks about the monstrous roar they heard earlier, which Frankie says they heard and tracked it, to which Usopp responded that it had been Luffy's voice, and that he and Chopper will explain what they saw later, and that it has become an unbelievable matter. Meanwhile, hordes of zombies are bringing food to Oars, complaining about how the entire island's food supply will be gone at this rate. Many are watching Oars eat in awe, with Moria commenting on his outstanding appetite. Perona is scolding Kamashi for hiding pirates, silencing any attempt for Kamashi to defend himself, as it is uncute. Oars apologizes to Moria as Leak Guy, saying that even though he didn't even know his own identity, he still forced Moria to feed him, and even if the food is horrible, he can't stop eating. The other zombies protest at Oars' rude behavior to their master, but immediately cowered and apologized upon making eye contact with the special zombie. Oars complains of his hunger, and that the food he has now is still not enough. Moria calmly replies that he'll give him as much food as he needs, but the zombies claim that there is nearly no more food left in the mansion. Sindri replies that there are emergency rations in the storeroom of Hogback's mansion, though the latter argues that if they let Oars eat it all, then it ruins the point of the food being for emergencies. Nevertheless, Moria orders 3 zombies to go out and retrieve the food, with many following behind. The food from the storage is brought back, while Sindri watches Oars eating and claims there to be some salted fish in the food as well. The 3 zombies panic and rush to find it, barely preventing Oars from consuming it. Moria explains to Oars his past life and that now he has been reborn to serve him as an underling. Oars refuses, stating he has a dream, and the place he's in is small and boring, and that he would like to go out for a while, perhaps travel the seas and check out the world. He proceeds to use a Gomu Gomu no pistol and punches his way out of the freezer, much to the shock and horror of the onlookers. He lands on the ground and vaguely wonders that for a moment he thought his arm would stretch, but quickly dismisses the thought to cry out his ambition of becoming the Pirate King. Ryuma mocks Brook, stating that just like their previous fight, it will end with Brook begging for his life while shouting for Ryuma not to touch his afro, but Brook disagrees, stating that this time will be different, recalling when he overheard zombies talk about a comrade who accidentally got purified when he ate some salted grilled fish and realized that it must be the key to the zombie's weakness. Afterwards, he had cornered Hogback and demanded that he be told where the zombie with his shadow was, threatening to spread fish all over the island, only to realize the weakness was in reality salt instead. Later, he came up with the idea to hum music while facing zombies so that he would not get scared and he'd be able to purify all he came across, so that he would definitely meet the zombie with his shadow one day. The survivors became terrified and begged Absalom to do something about the skeleton who annihilated their comrades. Kamashi tried to warn Perona of the danger, but was immediately silenced and told not to wake her up. Finally, he met Ryuma, and they fought, but Brook was quickly defeated. Ryuma suggested cutting off Brook's afro as a means of making him faster, but Brook quickly demanded the afro be left alone, as if it was cut off, it would never grow back. Ryuma tries to attack, saying that a skeleton who regards an afro to be important is nothing more than a joke, and Brook is forced to defend. Their fight continues, but Brook is again defeated and cornered against a tree. Brook pleads with Ryuma to spare his life, saying that he will never set foot on the island again, and Ryuma relents, saying that if Brook died, he would be in trouble as well. Back in the present, Ryuma states he does not want to see such a pitiful scene twice, Brook responding that he can say whatever he pleases, and the 2 swordsmen begin fighting. Brook proclaims while fighting that during the previous 5 years, for his second chance, he has gotten stronger. Absalom brings Nami to a room with an old zombie and 2 painting zombies and asks if the ceremony preparations are complete. The old zombie replies that they are ready when Absalom is ready, and one of the paintings comments on the bride's beauty. Absalom orders the ceremony be started immediately, and for Nami to be put in a dress and brought to the ceremonial hall. The old zombie answers that it shall be done right away. Robin, Frankie, Usopp, and Chopper rush across the stone bridge back towards the Thousand Sunny. They'd been told by Brook they would locate their missing crewmates Luffy, Zoro, and Sanji aboard for safekeeping. Frankie asks Usopp about Oars, whom Usopp had been seen being brought to life after being implanted with Luffy's shadow by Gecko Moria. They return to the Sunny to find the zombies had ransacked the ship in the process of returning their victims. Usopp finds the missing crewmates in the dining room in assorted humiliating poses. As Brook noted, they're unconscious and unresponsive until Usopp yells, "There's a beautiful swordswoman with lots of meat." This awakens all three. Back in the castle, Nami lays unconscious on a table while a zombie sizes her for a wedding dress. The zombie returns with the dress and lays it beside Nami to check. He also notes the presence of Absalom in spite of his Suke no Mai, forcing Absalom to leave in frustration. Luffy, Zoro, and Sanji quickly regain their bearings. The crew trade information they've picked up Nami's kidnapping, the zombies that hold the stolen crew's shadows, Brook's knowledge of the zombies and how to purify them, and the fact Moria is one of the 7 warlords of the sea. Frankie then admits that, in a callous moment, he'd ask what kept Brook going in spite of the hardship he'd endured. Brook then mentioned Laboon, whom he'd been forced to leave behind at Twin Cape but not before promising to return for him. Luffy, Zoro, Usopp, and Sanji instantly recognize the name and reveal to Frankie, Chopper, and Robin they've met him already and they're familiar with that promise. Chopper is quite surprised about how the whale swallowed the Straw Hats and the same Laboon that Brook is interested in. The group tells Chopper and the rest of how they also met Crocus inside the whale and the time Laboon waited for his friends to come back to him. After Luffy's fight with Laboon and the departure for Whiskey Peak, Sanji informs the rest of how Laboon is still waiting for his friends. Zoro learns that one of Laboon's old friends is Brook. Meanwhile, Brook is trying to hold his own against Ryama, who has the same abilities as he does. Ryama cuts the humming swordsman's afro and laughs. Brook stands up and tries to counterattack while thinking about Laboon. He felt he was not strong enough to face the Grand Line and all of Laboon's old friends would be dead by that time. Brook fears for Laboon's reaction to his skeletal appearance. Brook also thinks back to when he met the baby Laboon out at sea and performed for him. Even at a disadvantage, Brook vows to meet Laboon again. Back at the Thousand Sunny, Frankie cries over the Laboon story. Luffy then becomes interested in Brook and seeks to get him into his crew as the musician. Sanji then becomes determined to stop Nami's marriage to Absalom, and the crew prepares for the battle to take back their shadows. Oars plays with the mast of Thriller Bark and doesn't seem to extend his arm. His legs also fail to stretch. Hogback admires Oar's strength with Moria laughing with sadistic pleasure. Oars then decides to climb up by hand. Zoro tells of the plan to get back their shadows while Luffy wishes to see how cool Oars is using Luffy's shadow. Then, he becomes determined to bring down Moria, who's waiting at the top of his castle. Sanji announces his intentions to rescue Nami from Absalom, who had spied on Nami naked, igniting the cook's rage. Usopp blames himself for letting the navigator get kidnapped and goes with Sanji. Frankie hopes to back up Brook and Zoro volunteers. Robin also decides to go save Nami. Usopp then provides a set of anti-zombie salt balls so they can purify the zombies. There's no guarantee the forest will keep the crew safe from UV lights, as they need to get their shadows back before the sun comes up. The spying Hilden flies off to warn Moria while Oars is surprised on how big the Thriller Bark ship is and nearly falls off. Perona learns that Oars is not in their control and Moria needs to break the giant so he can be controlled. Hogback promises a massive set of Marios to stuff the shadows into. Hilden warns that the Straw Hat pirates are awake and are coming towards Moria and are in cohorts with Brook and about the weaknesses. The zombie soldiers are in a panic as Luffy fights through many of them. Hogback learns that Absalom is about to get married to Nami with the zombie generals in attendance. Absalom also wishes to use the dance hall for dancing, but the doctor wants the wedding cancelled. Verona plans to weaken the Straw Hats with her ghosts to make them feel negative yet again. With Absalom occupied, Hogback volunteers to be second in command and has managed to tame Inupi and Jigoro. Meanwhile, the zombie soldiers are at a disadvantage with the Straw Hats splitting up. Just then, Luffy's party begins to have negative thoughts thanks to Perona's ghosts hitting them. As the group tries to outrun the ghosts, Oars jumps down from the mast announcing a setting of sail, but breaks part of the castle, sending Sanji and Usopp falling down. Zoro and Frankie find themselves facing Oars and are unable to break through. The four are horrified to meet this zombie. With the Straw Hats split up, Luffy's party runs down a corridor with Luffy, assuring Zoro's party would be fine as he is determined to get Moria. Chopper informs if they keep going, they would be in the freezer. Suddenly they run into Hogback and Sindri. Chopper volunteers to take on Hogback while Luffy goes ahead, but Sindri throws plates at the captain. Robin uses 3 arms to grab the maid zombie's arm, preventing her from throwing more plates at her captain. Robin also stays behind to fight. Chopper accuses Hogback of being a mad scientist who admires how he escaped the garden. The scientist plans to kill the reindeer and turn him into a Mario. Inupi and Jigoro then come in under the doctor's orders. Chopper is horrified knowing different. Inupi wishes to fight Chopper. As Luffy continues through the freezer, he eventually sees Moria resting. Meanwhile, Zoro's party is flabbergasted at Oars' monstrous size and misuse of Luffy's power. Oars then grabs some debris and makes a pirate hat from it before walking off. Zoro knows of the danger Oars poses and Usopp feels afraid. With the stairs broken, taking another route would take too much time, but Frankie forms a corduroy bridge so they can cross. Zoro and Usopp's party then races down another hallway while Perona observes. Reaching Perona's quarters, they find the ghost princess's negative ghosts flying about. Seeing how they made it in, Perona warns of how her patience is wearing thin. The swordsman suspects Perona's play, and she senses fear before the princess demonstrates her ability to disorient her foes with her ghosts. Zoro, Usopp, Sanji, and Frankie try to free, but Perona fills the Straw Hats with bad thoughts. Just then, more wild zombies appear to capture the Straw Hats, but Usopp fires a Gatling salt star to purify the animals. Since Usopp is already negative, he took Perona by surprise. The ghost princess's negative hollow proves ineffective on the sniper, horrifying Perona. As Perona faints, she knows how people bear hopeful thoughts. The wild zombies and Perona cheer on. Usopp manages to snap his friends out of their negative states, and they leave Usopp to deal with Perona and her henchmen. Meanwhile, Absalom's wedding to Nami goes on with the generals cheering. Nami is possessed into accepting. As Absalom is about to kiss his new bride, Zoro's party races through the hall. The wild zombies are surprised that the negative hollows are not working on Usopp. The sniper needed backup, but is left to go at it alone. Perona fears for her downfall and summons more ghosts determined to rob Usopp of his will to fight. It seems to be effective this time, but the ghosts fail yet again. Even with Usopp's negative personality, he becomes confident in his battle. As the wild zombies move in, they are shot with salt stars, purifying more of them. The animals close their moves and chase the sniper around. Meanwhile, Zoro's party races through the outer ground and Sanji volunteers to save Nami by himself. Frankie points out how the adrenaline is kicking in and heads to where Brook is fighting Ryuma. Brook tries to hold on, but Ryuma continues to break his guard. With the skeletal musician losing, Ryuma expects his opponent to lose with dignity, but he gets up again. The two walk past one another with invisible slashes and Ryuma's arrow notch slash prevails. Brook then thinks of his time with Laboon as he wished to apologize to him for his bad luck and how lonely his life had been. Ryuma prepares to execute his opponent by starting with the afro, but then the mansion shakes. Zoro and Frankie make it to Brook's side, and he is surprised at how they followed him. Ryuma is angry about the outside interference, but Zoro demands a challenge from the zombie samurai. Luffy also senses the shaking and Moria is blaming his foe for it. The Straw Hat captain shows his vow to get back the shadows of his crew and Brook by defeating the zombie pirate. Before Absalom's lips can kiss Nami, she turns her head suddenly as the area is shaking from a sharp current. Oars is playing with Thriller Bar's rudder trying to speed the ship up. Absalom orders his henchmen to put Oars under control, but the giant zombie monster drops himself onto the zombie generals using a false gum-gum Gatling. The zombie demands his path of adventure be clear. Absalom is horrified by how the generals have been beaten and worries that Oars will sink the island ship, but then Sanji arrives to save Nami. Zoro holds Ryuma back from Brook. Zoro then declares that he will recover Brook's shadow for him. He also becomes interested in Ryuma's sword, Shusui. As Luffy faces Moria, the latter warns that even if he is beaten, the shadows will never make it back to their rightful owners. So Moria says that it is he who decides whether the shadows can go back or not. He also dares Luffy to try and make him. Luffy uses a gum-gum pistol to hit him, but it's actually a decoy, the Doppelman. Moria says that he will have his pawns make him the Pirate King, and also says that Oars desires that title. Moria also says that zombies with the victim's shadow will mimic the personalities, but it won't be long before they become eternally loyal to him. Luffy tries to land a gum-gum Gatling, but the Doppelman becomes brickbats to chase Luffy around. The Straw Hat captain slings back and prepares a counterattack. Meanwhile, Usopp continues to run from the wild zombies as he has to deal with them and Perona by himself. Suddenly, Usopp fakes an injury and uses Pepper Star to make them sneeze, then shoots more salt stars to purify the zombies. He then shoots a Firebird Star, but misses. However, the chandelier causes a fire and makes the wild zombies panic, but Kumashi blocks Usopp from hitting his boss. Perona flees into the hallways with Usopp in pursuit. Kumashi also chases and tries to ram Usopp. He then flies into a rage and tries to smash the sniper who is running in a panic. Outside, Oars continues his rampage and rests his legs on the water, making waves, scaring Cerberus off and yells he'll be Pirate King, scaring more zombies. Sanji then kicks his way through and catches Nami in his arms. Oars stretches himself and wonders if he would sink. He splashes himself in the water, making the waves massive, but the giant zombie struggles to swim and moves back to shore. Hilden flies to him and warns him of the salt water that would purify him. Meanwhile, Sanji sees how Nami isn't moving and believes she's a goddess. He also believes her to be a fairy, but comes back to his senses. Absalom spots him and launches invisible blasts at the cook. Absalom points how Inupi showed off Sanji's personality. The zombie generals still obey Absalom. Absalom then warns Sanji to leave Nami as his wife or Sanji would be killed. However, Sanji grabs Absalom with his legs and throws him back. He almost shoots Hands of the Dead at Sanji, but the cook uses Bass's coat and launch to kick him. To further get back at Absalom, Sanji kicks him with the Tendron, Flanchet, Quasi, Q, Quisao, and Jarrett kicks. Sanji begins to burst in flames and knows how his issues go back way long. Sanji shows his flames of rage to Absalom while Nami is still unconscious. Absalom recovers and learns that Sanji is angry with him over his stolen dreams. Absalom prepares to send the cook flying, but Sanji insists that he removes his hidden bazookas on his arms. To keep Nami out of harm's way, Sanji kicks away the bazookas. Sanji knows how Absalom can make objects invisible with his clear fruit. Sanji points out that Absalom ate the fruit and robbed him of the dream of seeing naked women. Absalom insults Sanji as a pervert and is kicked again. He then tears off his jacket and increases his muscle mass. Even so, Sanji kicks him again. Absalom makes himself invisible again and shows his determination to marry Nami. The cook loses sight while cradling Nami, and the invisible man hits him, mocking how he would sacrifice himself and uses a phantom hand and leg attack on him, but Sanji continues to carry Nami away. Absalom then makes a sneak attack, hurting Sanji badly and forcing him to drop Nami. Sanji regrets how he doesn't want to soil Nami's dress with blood but accepts he didn't take the clear fruit and decides to stay visible after all. Absalom closes in, but Sanji grabs the invisible commander. As Absalom bombards his opponent, Sanji retaliates with an extra H barrage and sends him flying into a wall. Meanwhile, Luffy is getting pecked on by the brick bats until he kicks them off, but they turn into the Doppelmen yet again. With Luffy's rage fuming, he uses a gum stamp to kick Moria. Elsewhere, Usopp continues chasing Perona with Kumashi behind him. The bear zombie tries to smash himself into the sniper, who dodges each time until Kumashi is crushed by some debris. The zombie continues to chase Usopp, but then he uses a flame ball to light Kumashi on fire, then spills some oil to make a fiery trail. As he is confident that Perona will not stand a chance, Usopp is startled by the ghost princess who is floating outside. She vows that once Usopp is out of the picture, the rest of the Straw Hats will be her next targets. Moria marches at Luffy, angry about the injury that was inflicted on him. The Straw Hat captain attempts another gum stamp, but the Doppelman stops it and grabs Luffy before it separates into brick bats. He stops them with a gum finger net and drops them, but they reform again. Outside, Perona laughs evilly and admits how she seemed to panic but then put herself under control. She then tells Usopp to cheer up, but Usopp shows his kabuto. The ghost princess disappears and seemingly becomes a giant in front of Usopp. The sniper tries a swallowtail meteor, but Perona reduces herself back to normal, so he misses. She also dodges a mantis meteor, mocking Usopp's aiming. He continues to miss his shots and finds Perona breaching into his body. Perona informs Usopp he would die soon from his heart exploding. Despite his pleading, the heart seems to fail, but it was actually a bluff. Her hands just passed right through. The sniper also tries a 6-chamber Viper Star, but they go right through Perona and she moves her hands through Usopp to scare him further. Usopp knows how he might be safe from Perona's body, but she uses a mini hollows and ghost wrap to cause explosions. The Firebird Star also fails to hit her. The mini hollows close in and seem to blow Usopp to pieces. Kumashi searches for Usopp in a blind rage and hears Perona's ghost rap. The bear zombie closes in while Usopp curses his bad luck as Kumashi gives more hits. Defeat seems certain until Usopp becomes Sogeking and shoots salt into Kumashi's mouth, finally purifying him. Perona is angered about Sogeking's appearance and he charges at the ghost princess. Sogeking speaks in Usopp's mind and implores him not to give up. He learns about how Perona's personality seemed odd as she panicked and somehow calmed herself. Usopp then searches for a hiding spot and sees a door. He takes Kabuto and shoots an Atlas Comet at the door. He then sees Perona's real body, confident in his victory. Usopp sees how Perona can float and go straight through people, and learns that she is a ghost that left a physical body behind. With the real body of Perona revealed, Usopp fires a Big Bang Star, but the shot misses. Perona says it was a dud, then reveals a large special hollow, scaring Usopp. She then fires more hollows and tries to blow him up. The special hollow then bites down on the sniper, leaving him trapped in its teeth. Perona points out how the ghost's teeth is inescapable, then returns to her own body. Meanwhile, Luffy is struggling against the Doppelman using a gum bazooka, but is deflected. It also stops another one of the Straw Hat Captain's attacks. Luffy tries to bite down, but the essence of the Doppelman reforms and it slams him down. Moria knows how hopeless his enemy's struggle has been. Horrors begins searching for his hat and resets it on his head. He also dreams of readying a cannon salute. In another part of the castle, Robin uses an Ocho Fleurs to bind Jigoro, but he breaks free. Hogback and Sindri watch, hoping Robin and Chopper will surrender. Inupi also insults Chopper and dares him to fight. Jigoro then fires a 36 caliber Phoenix, nearly hitting Inupi. With the distraction, Chopper restrains Jigoro and Robin begins to feed the sword zombie some salt. Inupi kicks the scholar, forcing her arms to disappear and drop the salt. Jigoro also throws the reindeer down. Hogback laughs wickedly at his victory. Ors continues his rampage, scaring several zombies while searching for his cannon. He soon begins to feel uneasy and realizes he was made to follow the orders of Moria. He decides to head back to the castle. Perona awakens in her normal body and prepares to detonate the special hollow to kill Usopp. However, the sniper uses an impact dial to stop the explosion. Usopp also points out that he used a birdlime star, binding the ghost princess's physical body. A zombie hippo tries to take Usopp by surprise but is hit by the impact dial. Suddenly, Usopp feels a percussion in his arm, but he uses a shining black star to hit his opponent. This releases cockroaches, horrifying Perona. Usopp then says she should be afraid of him and reveals a 10-ton hammer. Despite Perona's pleas, Usopp smashes his hammer down, pretending to knock her out just as the hammer pops and deflates. The roaches Usopp used were just toys and the hammer was just a balloon. As he leaves, Usopp bids her a good night's sleep until dawn. Meanwhile, Zoro is at a disadvantage against Ryoma, who is glowing with fire. Brook is horrified that the zombie samurai was not fighting at full strength. At Hogback's lab, 5 minutes earlier, Ryoma mocks how Zoro intends to take the Shusui sword from him. Zoro points out how he has carried 3 swords, one of which being a broken sword. The swordsman prepares to fight using 2 swords. Ryuma revels at the challenge Zoro is presenting and blocks a heart attack. Ryuma then uses Obeyed Cube Droid, shooting bullets of air out of his sword. It would seem to be a draw, as the lab is about to cave in. Brook knows that in Ryuma's former life he was still a fearsome samurai. Ryuma then thrusts his sword at Zoro with Prelude au Fur to break his swords, with the latter retaliating with a flash. It doesn't get through. The zombie samurai then uses a Gavotte Bond en Avant, launching an intense thrust at his foe with Zoro using a sword-style Rashomon, dashing past each other. Ryuma takes the hit and the lab's structure begins to weaken. Frankie hopes to take Brook to safety, while Zoro and Ryuma continue their fight using a 72 caliber Phoenix and Pokeremis respectively on one another. Frankie then fires a weapons left to make a safe exit. On the rooftop, the Straw Hat Swordsman and the zombie samurai appear to be evenly matched even with limited movement. The two continue to swing their swords with Zoro about to lose his footing. Breathing heavily, Zoro worries that his swords will break if he keeps it up. Suddenly, a part of the roof is blasted. Zoro almost lands a soaring dragon, and the skeleton uses an arrow notch / wounding Zoro greatly. Just then, Ryuma is lit on fire. With Zoro lying on the ground, Ryuma admits defeat. He passes Shusui onto his opponent as the sword has had a long history of owners. Zoro catches the sword and Ryuma believes he feels shame in his failure. Zoro wishes they could have met in the era when Ryuma was alive. Just then, Brook's shadow finally returns to its rightful owner, allowing Brook to walk around in broad daylight, and he makes another skeletal joke. As Ryuma cremates, Zoro wants to pretend the fight never happened. Usopp runs down a hallway and hopes to inform his friends of his victory over Perona and dodges a group of wild zombies using an empty picture frame. Elsewhere, a group of armored zombies are told by Hilden that the downed zombies were meant to restrain Ors. Just then, Ors arrives and the bat-like zombie orders a retreat. However, the zombie warriors try to charge at the giant zombie anyway, but Ors smashes through the generals. Remembering the orders, Ors continues his march. Luffy is now beginning to feel tired while Moria gloats how he can be Pirate King without lifting his fingers. The Doppelman then drops onto Luffy and then slams the Straw Hat Captain around. Moria warns that his backup will be arriving any moment. Hogback wickedly laughs about how the zombies have lost the personalities of the victims' shadows. On creation, the zombies retain a fraction, until they begin to serve Hogback loyally. Chopper then sees the Doctor's true colors. Years ago, Hogback had once worked to save lives and there were brief ways to restore people to life. The reindeer now realizes that Hogback will not do it for the benefit of people. Hogback made a lot of money off his treatment for people. Chopper knows he can no longer respect the Mad Doctor. Hogback then demonstrates how he can give people a new life by kicking Sindri hard and has her lick the floor. Disgusted, Chopper fumes with rage and learns how he broke into the Mad Doctor's room, featuring pictures of Sindri. Years back, Sindri was so popular she captured the hearts of men, including Hogback. On one tragic day, Sindri had a fiancée, making Hogback jealous. Just then, Sindri was killed in an accident, melting Hogback in sadness. Gecko Moria then offered him a chance to give Sindri a second chance at life. The Doctor then found Sindri's corpse and carried her to his lab to make her obedient. She then wishes to wipe out all plates in the world. Outraged, Chopper knows it's all a farce and demands that Sindri stop licking the floor. The reindeer knows how Hogback has been making monsters of people. Hogback then orders Sindri to attack. The scientist plans to make Chopper his loyal servant after killing him. Sindri then launches square blade plates at the raging reindeer. She seems to succeed in knocking out Chopper with a stack of plates. Chopper then tries to reason with Sindri and warns about what her family would have said about the situation they are in. To be alive, one needs to be a free person. Hearing that, Sindri drops and is almost fed some salt. Inupi stops them with a kick and Jigoro launches a 108 caliber phoenix that the parties manage to dodge. Robin uses a dos fleur but is deflected. Inupi and Jigoro begin to argue using part of Sanji and Zoro's personalities. With this distraction, Robin binds Hogback's mouth and knows how the zombies won't take orders if his mouth is shut. She releases him and believes he can kill them by dropping them out of the tower. He then orders Jigoro and Inupi to jump out of the tower, and suddenly becomes horrified that the two have fallen. Hogback cries over his error. Chopper then prepares to pummel the mad doctor, and Sindri begins to cry over without moving. Just then, Oars arrives at Moria and Luffy's location and Moria introduces his prized creation to his enemy. Chopper and Robin watch as Sindri's body refuses to move, much to the dismay of Hogback. However, Sindri quickly recovers and Hogback tells Sindri to buy as much time as possible, so he can escape. Robin quickly restrains Sindri though, and Chopper captures Hogback easily. Robin starts to lift Chopper and Hogback up, as Chopper is preparing to throw Hogback down to the ground from a dangerous height. Elsewhere, Luffy is confronted by Oars, who is given the order to capture and destroy every Straw Hat pirate. Moria takes advantage of Luffy's bewilderment at Oars and quickly escapes, though Luffy immediately starts chasing after him while Oars begins hunting down the other Straw Hats, and he interrupts just as Chopper is about to throw Hogback to the ground. Hogback is trampled by Oars while Sindri again is unable to move. As Oars continues to move, he also disrupts the battle between Sanji and Absalom. While Sanji is distracted by Oars, Absalom steals Nami back and plans to properly wed her this time without any disturbances. Zoro, Frankie, and Brook see Oars' huge figure coming towards them, and they quickly realize that it is Luffy's zombie. Sanji also arrives to help fight Oars along with Usopp, P. Chopper, and Robin, who realize that the gigantic Oars has received orders to destroy them. At the end, Oars cries for the Straw Hats to come out and have a battle with him. Luffy continues to chase after Gecko Moria, only to be stalled by Moria's shadow attacks. The rest of the Straw Hat pirates continue battling Oars. Oars quickly dispatches all of them, stating that he does not know them and that his master is Moria. Oars checks the bounties of the Straw Hat crew on his arm and doesn't know of Brook. He then spots Luffy, Nami, and Sogeking and goes off to find them, leaving the rest of the Straw Hats battered and beaten. Perona has a nightmare being surrounded by roaches and being bashed by Usopp's 10-ton hammer. She wakes in the real world surrounded by the wild zombies and is told of the events transpiring so far, and that Usopp has left. The mansion is also crumbling thanks to Oars, and he bashes some of the animals. The Ghost Princess spots Oars, calling out to Nami. Perona plans to steal the 1,000 Sunny and make a break for it. Elsewhere, Absalom has resumed his wedding, but now, Nami tries to resist his kisses to seal his marriage. Lola arrives seemingly obsessed with killing Nami and is angry for the lies the Navigator had given her. Lola claims that Nami is Namizo and demands that Absalom marry her. Lola tries to vent her frustration but keeps missing. However, it is secretly intentional so Nami can escape. Just as Lola is close, Absalom shoots an invisible blast at Lola, horrifying Nami. Absalom then declares Lola a lowly zombie. Absalom then sees that Nami is not running off. Nami then readies a thunder charge thinking of how she made friends with Lola. The Navigator charges at Absalom and shocks him greatly, hoping to finally beat him. Suddenly, Absalom falls down and has a dream of Nami being his bride before finding out that he is kissing her rod. With Absalom's limits reached, he is defeated. Lola breathes heavily, proclaiming Nami as her friend. Nami apologizes for lying that she was a man. Lola then goes after Absalom yet again. Luffy continues to chase Moria and dodges some debris thrown by Oars. He then makes a path by smashing down some trees. Moria then surprises some humans and dares them to take him on. Oars searches for his targets while the Straw Hats recover. The crew warns Oars not to underestimate the entire crew. With Absalom down, Nami goes in search of Thriller Bark's treasure. She finds out that the vault is empty but forces 2 chipmunk zombies to tell her where the treasure is. Meanwhile, the Straw Hat pirates fighting Oars decide to use tactics 15 Big Emperor. Frankie docks onto Sanji and Zoro, with Usopp docking as right arm and Chopper as the head. Nico Robin refuses to complete the docking as the left hand, stating that it is too embarrassing, much to the dismay of Oars, who is getting pumped to fight the Big Emperor. Zoro then takes Frankie's heavy nunchucks and is launched to Oars' arm by Sanji. He then smashes the nunchucks into Oars' arm and Robin attacks Oars' other arm with Cian Fleur Big Tree. Frankie and Chopper climb up to Oars' face and attack with their combined powers, causing Oars to fall off balance. Sanji kicks Oars' remaining foot that is supporting him, causing Oars to fall down face first. Meanwhile, Brook goes to the kitchen in search of milk and salt. Nami beats the 2 squirrel zombies into telling her what they did with the Straw Hats' treasure. She goes looking for Perona and heads to the Thousand Sunny when she spots the fallen oars. But oars remains stuck to the ground since his horns are now embedded into the ground. Using this to their advantage, the Straw Hats start beating him up, much to Oars' fury. Oars gets back on his feet, much to everyone's chagrin, and Usopp, Chopper, and Frankie blame Robin for not doing Tactics 15 properly. The former three decides to do it again anyway, and using Sanji's kick, aim to attack again. Embarrassingly, the attack is practically useless, but Usopp mocks Oars, causing him to punch his own head. Oars does not go down, and Frankie, Chopper, and Usopp run away again. Trying to think of what else they could do, Usopp reminds everyone that Luffy's memory is not completely gone. Basically, Luffy's weak points are Oars' weak points. Usopp and Chopper distract him, and Frankie and Zoro attack. While Frankie figures all they need to do is keep this up until Luffy defeats Moria, Sanji and Zoro are ready to simply defeat Oars with no intention of waiting for Luffy. Zoro decides this is a good chance to use the new sword he had acquired from Rima. Luffy continues searching for Moria in the woods, and finally manages to find what appears to be him. Nami reaches the Sunny and confronts Perona, who intends to take the ship and escape Thriller Bark with all the treasure. Suddenly, a tall stranger appears behind Perona who, shocked and frightened, falls down and introduces the man as one of the 7 warlords of the sea, Bartholomew Kuma. Perona tries to tell him she no longer works for Moria and was just on her way off the island. Perona wonders what he'd do with that information and ends up telling him. Snapping out of it, she intends to fight him after all, though he ignores her. Perona attacks, but Kuma reaches out to her and she disappears. Nami stands shocked, and Kuma identifies her and inquires about Luffy's brother Ace, then leaving her. Nami thought she had to warn everyone. Luffy has tackled Moria's shadow, but not Moria himself, and realizes he's been tricked into a wild goose chase. Luffy finds that he has been chasing Gecko Moria's shadow the whole time, while the real Moria has escaped. Some strange people are also seemingly searching for Luffy. Moria meets with Kuma as they discuss Crocodile's replacement, Blackbeard. The Straw Hat Pirates are still fighting Oars, planning to defeat him so Luffy can get his shadow back. Suddenly, the Straw Hats discover Moria in Oars' stomach, sitting in a cockpit. Usopp rushes to the kitchen to get more salt, only to be targeted by Oars. Brook appears and saves Usopp at the last moment, holding a big bag of salt. Brook laughs proudly and seems well enough to fight against Oars and Moria. In the process of getting some salt, he had also drank down some milk to heal himself. With the large quantity of salt, Sanji knows they only have one shot to purify Oars and beat Moria before sunrise. Moria then dares his enemies to try to get the shadows back. Brook prepares to join in, but feels stiff. Usopp fires an oil star and massive firebird star to light Oars on fire. Moria tells his giant minion to extinguish the fire as it feels nothing to him. Zoro and Chopper work together, with the swordsman jumping off the reindeer and using the great Buddha Slayer to break a part of a tower. Sanji uses the Jenga cannon to kick the tower pieces at Oars 6 times, but Oars deflects the tower pieces, and Robin uses Veinti Fleurs to throw her friends out of range, and Frankie shoots the debris. Usopp then reveals the Kuwagata shot with a bit of difficulty, and Frankie poses in front of the sniper. He then launches Frankie via Iron Man Comet at the giant zombie. Then the cyborg shoots an anti-monster cannon at Moria, but Oars dodges and gives a heavy blow. Moria orders his minion to give the finishing blow with a stomp. Just then, Nami readies a thunderbolt tempo and shocks Oars badly. This forces the large zombie to drop to his knees. Outside, the zombie soldiers are in shock. Sanji begins to feel love for Nami's heroics, but Nami warns it would give her away to Oars. The zombie prepares a gum-gum pistol and knocks Nami off the tower. The navigator hangs on from Robin's multiple arms and is brought down to her side. With his newfound power, Oars uses a gum-gum whip. Elsewhere, Luffy races back to the mansion and is tripped up by a pirate. The pirates that made contact with Luffy are the Risky Brothers, members of the Rolling Pirates. They hope to get Luffy back in time so they can grant him special abilities to finally attain victory. Then, marriage proposal Lola with pink hair appears and asks for Luffy's hand in marriage, but is rejected. For so long, the Rolling Pirates have been in misery without shadows for 3 years. Lola then orders the Risky Brothers to bring in some shadows. They force a shadow into Luffy, who feels convulsions. They also give him a sword that the Straw Hat Captain uses with great accuracy. The Rolling Pirates plan to use Moria's own abilities against him. The shadow power-up will only last for 10 minutes. With the fog clear, there's only 20 minutes before daylight begins. Then, more shadows are forced into Luffy. Luffy's skin turns pale blue and is becoming stronger by the second. With a more massive sword, Luffy takes it as well, demanding a fight. Nightmare Luffy then sets off while going in the wrong direction. Oars uses a Gomu Gomu no Cane to throw the Straw Hats around. He then uses a Gomu Gomu no Yari to stretch his legs down hard on the crew. Zoro wonders how Oars became so powerful. Moria explained that he used Shadow Revolution, extending his shadow down to Oars. With that, Oars can extend his body parts almost like Luffy does. Moria then turns Oars' shadow into a ball, making him a ball as well. Oars rolls towards the crew and suddenly stops and demands that he be the one to finish things. Moria orders Oars to pick off the straw hats one by one. Nami wonders where Luffy is and thinks about how Kuma might be somewhere on the island as well. Usopp hopes that by beating both Moria and Oars, the shadows will return. Brook then volunteers to help. Zoro charges at the Oars-Moria duo. Nami readies a dark cloud tempo, and Usopp shoots Brook at Oars with Robin making spin into a wild tornado. With lightning surrounding him, Brook uses a lightning bone sword to pierce right through Oars and crash into a wall. However, Oars retaliates by using a Gomu Gomu no Mochido kick the skeletal humming swordsman. He also blocks Usopp's Atlas Comet. Next, Oars launches a Gomu Gomu no Bazooka towards the sniper, but finds his arm not stretching. Robin had used Osheta Fleur's Cuatro Manos to bind Moria. She orders him to surrender the shadows and threatens to crush him to death. But then, Moria sends some brick bats at Robin and they bite her, dropping her. Sanji kicks the bats off, but they form into the Doppelman behind Robin. Just as she uses Clutch to snap Moria's bones, the Doppelman forms Moria's face. Moria had switched places with his Doppelman and now steals Robin's shadow, dropping her into a coma-like state. He decides to hold the shadow, but then Sanji lights his foot and tries an extra H, but is fooled by the decoy. Now furious, Oars uses a Gomu Gomu no Bazooka but is hit by Sanji's Frita Sortie. As Usopp carries Robin away, Chopper learns that Oars once died of frostbite, and that one of his arms was just recently placed onto him. Oars overhears and smashes the reindeer in, but he misses. Using jumping and arm point, Chopper is boosted by Sanji and they use a Rosio shoot to hit Oars in the right arm. Chopper warns that pain is a warning sign on the average body. Oars then uses a Gomu Gomu no Gatling to pummel Sanji and Chopper. With only Nami, Zoro, and Usopp remaining, it appears that all hope is fading. Moria orders Oars to stomp on them. Zoro hopes to make an opening and dodges an attack, but is knocked into a wall by Oars' head. He continues dodging while Usopp readies a special shot. Moria knows the swordsman can't win with multiple injuries. Just as Oars is about to finish off Zoro, he increases his muscle mass and uses a 2-gorilla slash to make the zombie get his hand stuck. He then uses a Yaksha Crow to cut at Oars' right arm. Oars then kicks Zoro into a wall and seemingly kills him, but then Usopp fires the massive salt bag into Oars' mouth. It would seem like Usopp has won. Luffy's shadow seems to resist and fly out, but then the Doppelman shows it caught the salt before it could be digested. The Doppelman then throws the salt back to Usopp and renders it useless. Oars then crushes Usopp underfoot and Nami tries to plead for his life. The zombie then crushes Nami next. Moria then orders his large minion to crush those who are out cold to make sure they're dead. Suddenly, Nightmare Luffy appears, showing he has saved Usopp and Nami. Nami and Usopp are shocked at Luffy's new appearance. Now serious, Luffy learns the entire crew has been beaten and prepares to fight next. He blocks Oars' Gomu Gomu no rifle and says there's only one Luffy before counterattacking. Oars then crashes onto the ground, scaring the zombie soldiers away. With his new abilities, Luffy and Oars' strengths are now evenly matched. The rolling pirates arrive and check for the other Straw Hat crew members and find them heavily injured. Lola orders her crew to get the Straw Hats to safety. Nami and Usopp suspect them as hostile. Luffy throws Oars like a wrestler by his hair. The zombies begin to fear that Moria will be losing. Nightmare Luffy begins to slam Oars around. Meanwhile, the Straw Hats meet with the rolling pirates who explain they just want to get off Thriller Bark and go out in broad daylight. Kuma watches from the collapsing mansion. Oars recovers and tries to use a Gomu Gomu no bullet, but Nightmare Luffy uses a sword to cut through the large zombie. As Moria tries to escape, he is hit by a Gomu Gomu no pistol. After that, Nightmare Luffy uses a Gomu Gomu no storm to rapidly hit both Oars and Moria and send them crashing down. Luffy falls to the ground and the shadows depart from him. It seems like victory and Lola cheers for Luffy. Oars lies seemingly broken along with Moria while the rolling pirates cheer for Luffy's victory. Usopp tries to wake Luffy up as he was exhausted from using the shadows for his nightmare form. With sunrise approaching, Lola hoped Luffy would force Moria to return the shadows to the rightful owners. Suddenly, Oars and Moria recover, frightening the rolling pirates who have run out of options. The crew plans to get to the forest as the sun will be blocked out, but the Straw Hats recover. Luffy insists on attempting a coup de grace on Oars, but is worn out. Lola's crew is surprised by Brook's appearance. Nami also shows herself at the top of a tower. Sanji and Chopper race down a hall while Frankie prepares something with Usopp. As the rolling pirates clear out, Brook climbs Robin's arms on the tower, while Nami uses cool balls and rain tempo to dampen the giant zombie. Frankie then fires a coup de vent to charge up a super cold cannon to freeze Oars up. With Oars frozen from the legs down, Sanji kicks some chains at the giant. On top of the Thriller Bark mast, Luffy is thrown down by Brook, who then goes into third gear and uses the bone balloon to enlarge his arms. Zoro then forces his way into Oars's stomach with the 3000 world slash. Sanji then tightens the chains on Oar's neck. Chopper points out how Oar's spine is S-shaped and when straightened, it will get the full impact of Luffy's blows. The Straw Hat Captain then uses a gum-gum giant bazooka to snap Oar's spine, finally defeating him. Everyone is in surprise and awe as Oars falls down defeated. With dawn approaching, the zombies begin to worry that Thriller Bark will be finished. Sindri watches in silence, as does the warthog zombie Lola. As the rolling pirates and Lola cheer, Luffy is shrunk down to size. Chopper knows even with his spine broken, the large zombie will not get up. Usopp tells his captain to hurry and get the shadows back from Moria. Suddenly, Moria gets up and Lola demands the shadows be returned to their rightful owners. However, he refuses and blames everything on Luffy. Moria points out how the new world is far more dangerous than anyone could imagine, even to the Straw Hat Pirates. Moria then gathers shadows to him as the zombies are immortals. Using Shadow's Asgard, he overloads himself with about 1,000 shadows, becoming more grotesque. In the process, Sindri, Warthog, Lola, Hilden, Jigoro, Inupi drop lifeless and the other shadows are consumed. The Straw Hat Pirates see to their horror that Moria has grown to an immense size from the thousands of shadows he's absorbed. The zombie soldiers prepare to accept the worst when Luffy grows back to his normal size. With dawn approaching, there is now little time. Moria roars and smashes part of Thriller Bark while much of the rolling pirates try to flee. As they try to, the sunlight begins to burn some of the pirates who don't have their shadows. Lola intends to stay behind while her crew flees and sees how the Straw Hats won't flee in terror of Moria's power. She hopes the Straw Hats can at least have a fighting chance just as the sunlight hits her, but Lola shrugs it off, putting her faith in Luffy. Zoro sees how Moria got much bigger, and Robin notes how his pride made him lose control. Luffy orders his crew to get the others to safety while he fights Moria. Lola's pirates see how with that much power in his body, Moria will have a tremendous advantage and there's not much time before daylight. Luffy enters Gear 2 while Zoro notes either the sun will vaporize them all or the Thriller Bark monster will be destroyed. Moria attempts to claw at Luffy, but he dodges and uses the Gum Gum jet rocket to hit Moria hard, releasing some of the shadows. The Straw Hat Captain then uses a jet bazooka barrage to force Moria to release hundreds of shadows, making him weaker. However, Moria traps Luffy in a black box via his brick bats. He then crushes the box, saying it is punishment for going against him. Even after a number of stomps, Luffy breaks out. He also says that even if he is a nail that sticks out, he will not be hammered down. Luffy also warns that he would return all the shadows to their rightful owners no matter what. With time running low, Luffy goes into Gear 3 with Usopp worrying about the last time his captain used it. With his rubbery body now immense, Luffy uses the Gum Gum giant jet shell to force Moria to regurgitate more shadows, but he tries to hold them in. Lola calls for her shadow to come back to her. Luffy tells his shadow to shape up and return to him and gives a hard blow to Moria yet again. The main tower of Thriller Bark collapses onto Moria. With the shadows escaping, Moria warns Luffy about the nightmares awaiting him in the new world. Just then, morning light arrives and Luffy, Zoro, Robin, and Sanji begin to burn up. Usopp and Chopper cry in terror that their shadows may not make it to them. On another ship in the Grand Line, the captain insists on sleeping more, but one of his crewmates points out that his shadow has returned to him. The captain runs out of his bed and is elated to see how his own shadow has returned to him, and so are his crew. The crew wonders if someone has defeated Moria. On a marine ship, a marine is delighted to have his shadow back. More pirates and civilians express joy of having their shadows returned to them. In one home, Margarita drops some plates and is shocked at how her reflection had returned along with her shadow. Her boss, Igana, is surprised that her shadow is back. The maid tells of how she once hated plates but got over it. Her boss stops her from leaving as he was pleased how Margarita was unscathed, making her cry with joy. All seem lost for the Straw Hats until Zoro sees how he managed to survive, Robin thinking she would be on her way to heaven, and Sanji wishing to be with her. Nami and Chopper cry with joy with Brook saying he almost had a heart attack, but doesn't actually have a heart. He then sees the sun for the first time in days. Lola and her crew cheer over the return of their shadows. Luffy has also survived but is unconscious from his intense fight with Moria. Robin says that when the shadows returned, their bodies were restored in the nick of time. Sanji knows that all the creatures made by Moria and his henchmen were all just fabricated. Meanwhile, Hogback wakes up Absalom, who is horrified to see the warthog zombie of Lola and tries again to turn down her marriage proposal. But the doctor informs him that the warthog zombie is now lifeless and the bad news that Moria is beaten. With the damage done to Thriller Bark, Hogback doesn't wish to spend the rest of his days there. Chopper knows that Gear 3 could wind up tearing Luffy apart. The old man with the lantern arrives and reveals he is just an elderly injured man and thanks the crew for finally defeating Moria. Lola recognizes him as Spoil, the chairman of the Thriller Bark Victims Association, and also congratulates the Straw Hat Pirates on their victory and also wants a husband so badly but is turned down. Zoro wanted to point out how the path to victory was of the Straw Hat's own accord and is slapped by Nami for it. Lola's crew offers to show Moria's treasure room and allows the Straw Hats to get it as reward. However, Nami also warns that Kuma is still on the island. Kuma appears communicating with his superior on his Den Den Mushi and tells them of Moria's defeat. The person on the other end orders that Moria is to be transported back to Marine headquarters, and no one must know about his defeat. Kuma is then ordered to eliminate every last person on Thriller Bark, including the Straw Hats. The Straw Hats feel exhausted from the fight with Moria, but Zoro prepares to fight. Nami warns him of the abilities Kuma has, like how he seemingly made Perona disappear and can warp in split seconds. Kuma takes off his gloves and warps to the Thriller Bark victims and the Straw Hats. As Lola's crew charges at him, Kuma launches a paw-shaped blast through some of them and causes a massive shockwave against some he didn't touch. He then warps to Zoro and prepares to fight him. Bartholomew Kuma towers over everyone. Many of the witnesses there wonder what kind of powers this man could have to cause so much destruction. Lola is upset as she and the rest of the Rolling Pirates had just finished suffering through the nightmare of Gecko Moria, but with Kuma in their midst, it seemed their suffering was far from over. The other members of the Rolling Pirates decide to fight as the Straw Hat Pirates already went through a lot to defeat Moria. Zoro suddenly speaks up saying that Kuma challenged him, intending to take down the Warlord of the Sea himself. Kuma starts to speak rather highly of the Straw Hats and their exploits, and how quickly they rose to infamy. However, Kuma makes it clear that they must still be taken out. At that moment, Zoro prepares his swords. Usopp tries to talk Zoro out of it, but Zoro doesn't listen, as he intends to fight even if it leads to his demise. As a first attack, Zoro uses Notoryu II Rashomon, but Kuma quickly moves out of the way. Kuma is suddenly above Zoro and tries to attack him, but Zoro manages to dodge at the last second. Zoro comments on how fast Kuma is, and Kuma sends another paw-shaped air attack that manages to slightly graze Zoro. Everyone then notices the paw on Kuma's hand as Zoro gets up again. Zoro uses Sanjiroku Pound Ho, but Kuma deflects the attack away using his paw, redirecting it near some of the Rolling Pirates. Chopper wonders how Kuma is able to deflect the attack with his bare hands. Zoro then says that he's figured out what Kuma's ability is. Kuma reveals that he ate the Nikyu no Mai that allows him to deflect anything. The other Straw Hats question the name and appearance of Kuma's devil fruit, particularly Frankie, who doesn't believe it's a serious devil fruit. Kuma sends an air blast at Frankie, knocking the cyborg down. Everyone is shocked at how Frankie, a cyborg, got knocked down so easily. Robin explains this, saying that Kuma is deflecting the air itself. Kuma calls the technique the Pad Ho, as he is able to deflect the air itself into a high-speed, damaging attack. Kuma now assumes a sumo-like position and fires off multiple air shots known as T-Sapari Pad Ho at Zoro. Zoro manages to evade the attack using Toro Nagashi, but as he connects with his attack on Kuma, Kuma deflects the attack away with his paw pads. Zoro is sent flying backwards and Kuma quickly moves closer to him. Some of the Rolling Pirates comment that Zoro is too worn out from fighting oars, and as Usopp calls out, Kuma suddenly appears behind Zoro, preparing for another attack. Sanji suddenly rushes in and kicks Kuma in the face, halting the attack. Zoro angrily tells Sanji not to butt in, but notices Sanji falling down after kicking Kuma. Sanji screams in pain as Kuma recognizes him due to his kicking style. Sanji wonders if Kuma's face is made of steel, and Usopp fires a high no Toriboshi fire bird star at Kuma. Kuma simply deflects the attack back at Usopp, damaging him. It becomes apparent that the Straw Hats are having quite a lot of trouble fighting the Warlord. After a bit of silence, Kuma speaks, saying how boring it is to fight against the injured Straw Hats. Kuma admits it isn't a fair fight as the Straw Hats already fought against Moria and Oars, but he also says he must follow orders even if he doesn't agree with them. Kuma then suddenly starts to compress a large amount of air into a strange, translucent, paw-shaped energy ball. Nami notices that Kuma is compressing the massive air mass into a very small area. Robin says he plans on releasing the compressed energy, causing an explosion much like a bomb. After a little while, Kuma appears to have finished, but before he releases the attack, he proposes an alternative. Kuma says he will spare everyone's lives if they hand Luffy over to him. The Straw Hats and the Rolling Pirates all decline the proposal, and Kuma releases his attack, Ursa's Shock, upon everyone, resulting in a massive explosion, which results in the destruction of Thriller Bark. After the devastating power of Kuma's Ursa's Shock, every one of the Straw Hat Pirates and the Rolling Pirates are knocked out. Kuma then takes this time to try and capture Luffy, who is still worn out from his fight with Moria earlier. However, just as Kuma picks up Luffy, he is suddenly attacked by Zoro, who slashes at him with Itoryu II Shishi Sansen. This attack manages to damage Kuma, but Zoro is shocked to see cybernetic parts under Kuma. Zoro says he should have known that Kuma is a cyborg like Frankie, and Kuma fires a laser from his mouth that misses Zoro directly, but the shockwave sends him flying. Zoro is shocked to see that Kuma is able to fire a laser from his mouth, and Kuma explains that he is a pacifista. He continues on saying that a pacifista is a creation designed to work for the world government, and says that he himself was created by the infamous Dr. Vegapunk. Zoro replies saying that Kuma has a major advantage being a pacifista with devil fruit powers. Zoro also says that his body has given up on him, but, not wanting to give up his captain's head, offers up his own life to Kuma. Zoro says his bounty may not be as high as Luffy's, but he is willing to give up his dream to become the world's greatest swordsman in exchange. A surprised Kuma looks on how Zoro is willingly to give up his life and dream to make his captain's dream come true. Suddenly, Sanji gets up and offers up his life instead. However, Zoro, who already made up his mind, knocks Sanji out. Zoro turns his attention back to Kuma, who throws his swords in front of him and asks Kuma to show some honor. Kuma, after thinking for a while, agrees to Zoro's plea, saying that it wouldn't be honorable for him to still attack Luffy. Kuma, picking up Luffy, tells Zoro that he will spare Luffy, but not before Zoro takes Luffy's place by experiencing all the pain he has endured during his time on Thriller Bark. Kuma says that Zoro must take all of Luffy's pain if he really does want to take his place, saying that the experience will kill Zoro as he is close to death. Kuma sends over a sample to Zoro, and Zoro suffers intense pain from that small sample. Zoro falls to the ground but barely manages to make it back to his feet. Zoro then sticks his arms into the giant mass of pain. Kuma then remarks on Dragon having a good son. Later, the Straw Hats and the Rolling Pirates all regain consciousness. Frankie is surprised to see Luffy acting well, who tells the crew that his body feels as good as new. As the other Straw Hats wonder why, Sanji runs off toward Zoro's direction. He reaches Zoro and asks what happened to the warlord, but notices blood everywhere. Sanji asks Zoro what happened, and Zoro, who is covered head to toe in blood, says that nothing happened. Nami is really happy with the pile of treasure they find. The crew carries lots of food with them down to the courtyard. While everyone starts enjoying it, two men say they saw what happened to Zoro after everyone else, including Sanji, was knocked out. Sanji drags them out and asks what happened. After being told about Zoro risking his life and taking in all of Luffy's pain from their time on Thriller Bark so far, he makes them swear not to tell anyone, especially Luffy, since he would get sad at the thought that all the pain he took for his friends was in one of them. Everyone starts partying, and Luffy tries to feed Zoro, still knocked out from taking all of his pain, some rum, but Chopper won't let him. Brook plays the piano, and everyone starts partying. Luffy asks once again if Brook wants to join the crew, seeing he got his shadow back. Brook declines again, saying that he made a promise to Laboon the whale. Luffy then tells Brook he doesn't need to worry and that Laboon's fine. Brook starts crying with happiness and has a flashback to when he first met Laboon. Brook recalls his past, when the whale Laboon started following his pirate ship and befriended the crew. When the crew headed toward the Grand Line, they had no choice but to leave Laboon behind because the danger the sea would present to a young whale like him, but Laboon followed them over Reverse Mountain anyway. Brook and his captain convinced Laboon to stay behind, promising that after they traveled through the entire Grand Line and he grew strong enough to follow them, they would come back and bring him on their adventures. Unfortunately, they were unable to fulfill their promise. About 50 years ago, the Rumbar pirates left the young Laboon in the care of Crocus at the outlet of Reverse Mountain. Brook, then the crew's musician, promised the whale that they would sail around the world and return for him. Sometime later, the wreckage of Brook's ship floats aimlessly in the Florian Triangle. Brook, resurrected by his Yomi Yomi no Mai devil fruit powers, but not before his body decayed into a skeleton, is gathering the remains of the rest of his crew. The last skeleton he stores below deck is that of Mizutama Daisuke. He places the skulls all in a separate casket. He remembers the earlier day when they had to face a particularly nasty weather, including waterspouts. They regrouped in the galley, where Brook prepared to play his violin to cheer up the crew. Brook scares himself when he passes by a mirror, confirming that he had indeed reanimated his skeleton. He recalls a situation where Yorkie punished two crew members who had been fighting over a near-friendly fire incident during a battle. Yorkie punched the crew member who was almost shot, telling him the pain is a reminder that he's still alive. During one night, Brook wonders how Laboon is doing, and Yorkie ribs him for being overly sentimental. They later celebrate a victory over the Marines, which earned Yorkie another increase in his bounty. Brook's wandering leads him to the steering wheel. While quietly humming Bink's sake, he spins the wheel. It shows that the broken rudder is not moving. In another flashback, the crew is shown to be worrying about Yorkie's illness. It turns out he contracted an infectious disease at a recent jungle island and infected 10 other crew members. The ship's doctor says he does not know this disease and it may kill the crew if Yorkie and the other infected aren't evacuated. They land at the next island, where Yorkie orders the able-bodied crew members to leave the original ship and get a new one. He and the other ill crew members would then try to return to West Blue through the calm belt. Brook is the last to leave Yorkie's side. Yorkie takes Brook's hand and asks that the ship be sent off to their favorite song. 10 years after he originally entered the Grand Line, Brook is doing his best to amuse himself. While sleeping, he dreams that he is back on the ship with the entire crew back, including Yorkie. But when he falls on his face, he's snapped out of his dream and back into his lonely reality of being stuck as a skeleton on a broken ship in the Florian Triangle. He looks through the broken galley and sees his piano. He remembers a day when he wondered if Yorkie made it safely through the calm belt. As their journey continues, Brook eventually gets a bounty for himself. Of course, they sing wherever they go, no matter what situation they are in. The scene returns to Thriller Bark in the present day, where Brook is playing for the Thriller Bark Victims Association and the Straw Hat Pirates. Brook stops playing and takes a moment to undo the bandage on his head. He opens his skull, shocking Usopp and Sanji, and pulls out a tone dial, setting it on the piano. He says it's very rare, but Luffy says they learned about dials on Skypiea. Brook says he keeps the tone dial in his body at all times and plans on playing it for Laboon when he finishes his journey. He tells Usopp that the tone dial carries a song, a message to Laboon that the crew was happy all the way to the end of their journey. Brook asks if he can play the tone dial, and Luffy says he should. Brook reaches for the tone dial. In another flashback, Brook's ship is ruined. The Rumbar pirates have been decimated by an unknown enemy in the Florian Triangle. The crew finds that the enemy used poisoned weapons against them, though still alive, won't be for much longer. The crew worries about Laboon, and one crew member inquires about Brook's Yomi Yomi no My powers. Brook says he's never died before, but he suddenly gets an idea. He finds a tone dial that the crew had purchased. He suggests that if they're going to die, why not die happy? He says that they should sing one last time and record it on the tone dial. If the Yomi Yomi no My works and he is revived, he will find a way to deliver the tone dial to Laboon. As the song is recorded in the past, it is played in the present. Lola gets everyone singing and dancing again. Brook plays the piano to the tune as they hear the Rumbar pirates sing Bink's Sake. In the present, the crowd gathered at Thriller Bark sings the song. A scene in the past is shown of the Rumbar pirates playing the song for Laboon, who even chirps along to the song. Another flashback shows Brook singing it alone during his solitude following his revival. As they record it, the Rumbar pirates die one at a time, but they all sing to their final breath and die smiling. Brook tearfully counts down the last 4 in musical terms until he is the last one left. He remembers the original mission of the Rumbar pirates, to bring joy to children through their music, and the promise he made to Laboon. He has a smile on his face when he finally succumbs and dies. Back in the present, as he entertains the Straw Hats in Thriller Bark, Brook resolves to finally keep his promise to Laboon and return to him. Brook asked if Luffy's original invitation to join the Straw Hat Pirates was still open, and Luffy accepted him as part of the crew. All the Straw Hat Pirates were shocked by this, except for Roronoa Zoro, who was sleeping, and Nico Robin, who knew Luffy would accept him no matter what, but they nevertheless welcomed him to the crew. Brook fully introduced himself, revealing he is a wanted pirate himself, with a bounty of belly 33 million, though it's highly unlikely the Marines would identify him by his bones. 2 days later, Usopp and Frankie made a grave for the dead Rumbar pirates. Brook is glad that his comrades finally have a resting place, especially since the soil at Thriller Bark is from their native West Blue. The Thousand Sunny wasn't big enough to store their remains anyway. He then spent some time playing the violin when Zoro arrived. Zoro then planted the broken Yubashiri at the grave and joined Brook in his mourning. Zoro and Brook finally had a chance to get acquainted. Zoro teasingly pitied the skeleton, saying he's now part of a crazy crew. Eventually, the Straw Hats were ready to depart. Lola told everybody she wished they could party just a little longer. Frankie told her that the Thriller Bark Victims Association can use Brook's ship, on which he repaired the rudder and sails. Lola asked Frankie to marry her, but he politely declined, saying he's too super for such to work out. Lola then gave Nami a Vivre card, which points the way to her mother, a pirate in the New World. Luffy took out the piece of paper he received from his brother, Portgas D. Ace, which turned out to also be a Vivre card. To their surprise, Ace's card was burning and shrinking, a sign that Ace's life was in danger. As Luffy and his crew sail away, 3 enormous and mysterious figures appeared in the fog, looking over Thriller Bark. The victims decided to set sail the next day. Nami asked Luffy if he's alright sailing on, knowing Ace might be in danger. Brook said he doesn't mind a detour, while others like Frankie expressed interest in taking Brook straight to Laboon. Believing that Ace can get out of trouble on his own, Luffy decided to head onward rather than go to rescue him. He says Ace doesn't like looking weak, and he wanted to meet him in the New World at full strength as a rival. The Straw Hats shared another toast for Brook, since Zoro was asleep during the first one, and take a coup to burst for a jump start to their next adventure.